products that Coke ever came out with, Coca-Cola Company, it's worth consuming.
And you know why that Dasani tastes better than any that I've ever drank. You know why? Just a little sodium.
No sodium.
Most water has no sodium.
Man, I would just start taking my water and sprinkle a little salt in there and shake it.
I do.
In this fridge?
Yes, good to be back. Friday evening, April the 17th, 2020.
Need to put a fireplace in here and make it a fireside chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Gotta fix the background where it looks like the Oval Office.
you Bush, George Bush.
You remember that? I was
Yeah, I
thinking
do.
that. That's why I said that.
You got me in trouble.
We were in Haiti. They all kept looking at me and saying I looked like George Bush. George Bush. Alan was with me. I remember we went to a place where they sold a lot of things in a market, and so they all came running around me just gathering up, holding statues and all kinds of different things. You want to buy, you want to buy, you want to buy. And I said, no, I don't. So finally I told him, I said, listen, I'm not the leader here. I'm not the one you want. I don't have the money. That man right over there has the money. And I pointed to Alan, so they all went, whoo!
Oh, wow.
And then I went back to the car and sat down, and Alan came and said, you almost got me killed.
Yeah, their tone went from will you buy to you will buy.
Yeah.
You're going to buy from us. It's like, I don't have any money. Sat there, came and got me by the arm and let me out of there.
Yeah. And it was like a week later, we went to a beach somewhere, and here they came after him again. I mean, they was trying to get to the rich man.
Yeah. So if you go on a trip with a touring, watch him.
Well, it's good to be back, and we're going to have a discussion tonight. But I wrote this down, just hoping it would kind of give some structure to what we're going to be talking about. But overpowering influences in the one world government, things that we can see that are coming into place now and are happening now. That are going to lead into a one world government. So the scripture keeps coming to me. The twain shall be one flesh, and you know where that scripture is at and what it's talking about. The twain shall be one flesh. And I was thinking of the twins down through the scripture of the Old Testament. Our discussions last night a little bit, Brother Wesley and I, and Brother Alan Stuckless. I've got a hearing aid that keeps squeaking on me. But the twain should become one flesh, and I was thinking of the twins down through the scriptures, the Old and New Testament. Twins showing up all the way through. And how we need to look at those twins as one spirit. And the twins, by looking at them as one spirit, look how Judas and Jesus paralleled all the way through to hanging together on a tree, each one alone. We are both of them. And I'm going to make this statement, and it's going to shock you until you really think about it, but we were both of them. I was Judas hanging on a tree. I was Jesus hanging on a tree. We were both of them, and they both brought our redemption. They ministered together. They did sop together. They ate the Last Supper together. They grew up in Israel together. They went to Gethsemane together, and they hung together. They are us. Mm-hmm. That's the two sides of you, the iniquity and the theophany, or the righteousness, or the two sides of you, human and the iniquity inside that human. They were together. They were one. And we're going to talk about this for a little while. I was thinking of Joab today. How many knows who Joab is? Joab. He was the general of David, Israel's general, when King David was there. Yep. And I was thinking of Joab today, the general of David. How he stayed with the kingship of David. He didn't leave the kingship of David, but never submitted himself to the move of the Spirit in the life and atmosphere of the kingdom or of his king. He didn't ever submit. David told him not to touch Saul. He went out there and cut his skirt anyway. David told him not to count Israel. He did it anyway. David told him not to kill Absalom. He thrust a dart through his heart anyway. At the end, Joab was found on the opposite side. He was trying to put another son of David on the throne, while David and the prophet was trying to put Solomon in a different camp. And David, when he brought Solomon in, David said very clearly on his deathbed, go down there and kill Joab. kill him. And Solomon sent to have him killed, and he ran into the sanctuary and got on the altar. And David said, go in there and slaughter him anyway. Kill him. I don't want him left. I want to know that he's dead. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you the reason why. Joab never saw the anointing that was there. He never noticed or realized the anointing David had. He only knew military strength. Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. David was a military man, and Joab went after that nature. Joab was the twin of David. That's why David wanted him dead so bad. Because Joab was the arm, the military arm, and the twin, the iniquity of David, he put in Joab. And Joab was David's dark side, if you want to call it that. And he was David's iniquity, expressing himself out into the kingdom. And David wanted his iniquity purged. All of these things are types and shadows. The twins are there. You have them. I have them. In your kingdom, there's two. And I guarantee you, if you let me just be with you for a week and let me see your history and background, I can show you the two in your life. I know the two in my life. And what we want is exactly what David wanted. I want to know before I die, before I leave this scene, I want to know that my iniquity has been wiped clean. It's done and it's over. So those twins are there. And I believe we are watching the spiritual and physical world moving into one flesh. And science, spiritual and world governments, it is a strong move towards the kingdom of Christ. What we're watching is not a move away. It is a move to the 11th chapter of the book of Revelation. So those twins, they're in the world right now. And we're talking about influences in your natural world, your physical world, your individual world, your spiritual movement. Everything it's in your life.
So you're referring to the twins as contrast?
Yes.
In a sense.
In a
sense.
sense.
Put it in a word, your twins are contrast.
That's right.
Okay.
And how are you dealing with that? You know, how should we be dealing with that? You know, I get interested in politics. I get interested in religion. I get interested in all these things, and I see things happening all the time that are that I find one or the other kind of raising up in me. All that. I hope that doesn't do that all night, but I have to resolve that in my heart. Those things. How do you resolve it in your heart? What are some of the things you see that raise up in you, where that you say to yourself, now look, you really can't control that, so you're better off to start feeling a different way about it or whatever.
Every time I walk into Walmart.
Me, it's Facebook. If I get on Facebook, the twins come out. I got one side that's wanting to support one, and the other side's wanting to go out and behead the others. There's that contrast there. You know, the humanitarian will come out, and then the flip side of it is the executioner will come out, off with their heads. You know, and for me, the only way I reconcile the whole thing is just turn the phone off. I have to get away from it. I have to, okay, no more Facebook, no more news, and just put the phone down, leave it alone all day long and don't get on, and then I'm back. I'm back at peace. And that's the only way I can do it, because it's very hard for me to get into a situation, to get into an unveiling of circumstances and not feel both of those rise up at the same time.
Yeah.
I've never been one-sided. It's always one over the other.
Yes.
And there's that battle. The next thing you know, when it's all over with, it's me battling me back and forth. And it's like, what am I doing here, man? And I just have to shut the thing away, turn it off, and it doesn't exist. Go back into my own world. And that's the only way I can deal with it. It's hard for you to do. I don't know how you get away from it, man.
Yeah.
You can't really.
Yeah, I have thought about doing that at times, just walk away for 3 or 4 days or 5 days or whatever. But I know that I can't. So I have learned to go inside and I don't really call it empathy because I don't know that I have the feelings those people have. But I try to put myself into where they are at, what they just wrote about, what they just said. You know, at times I'll read something and right away I say, that is just stupid. That's ignorant. You know, and then I say, okay, who is this guy or who is this lady? And I'll even click on their wall and I'll look at where they're living and sometimes who they've been under and what pastors, and I would begin to say, you know, they're only expressing what they've been taught.
Yeah.
They're good people. They're excellent people. And for you to bash them or to go in there and strike back in such a hard way is not going to help them at all. So I've learned to do what I think somebody calls it, practice the pause. I click the pause button and I say, keep your mouth shut here for a minute. Keep your fingers off of the board and just think and pay attention. And then I'll say, okay, I'm going to go to their wall. I'm going to look at this. And I realize who they are, where they're coming from, and why they said it. Mm-hmm. Then I can give a constructive response.
Right.
Occasionally, I put a response out there that's a little quick, and I think, gosh, I haven't said that, but it's there. And so then I have to deal with how to get around that. I created 2 problems.
I do that all the time. I'll walk up and open-handed slap them upside the head and realize what I did, and then I got to hug them and hold them for a while.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I do that. I haven't learned yet, at almost 60 years old, I have not learned how to deal with that. I still respond because I care about humanity. I care about what people go through. And I realize, for the most part, by and large, people are a product of their environment.
That's right.
They are. And I have to step back and look at it and take a few breaths. But usually by the time I'm stepping back, I've already hit them upside the head.
It's like one guy, he come at me hard about America is nothing but terrorists, and they've terrorized the whole world, and they've done this and they've done that. And I wrote back fairly quickly and I said, do you live in America? And of course he said, no, but I don't have to live there to know the facts. Right away I wrote back and said, yeah, you just believe what you read, but you know nothing. And I thought, the next day when I went back and read, I thought, Don, why did you do that? What, you know, I looked the guy up. He lives in a nation that the nation itself has always been very hard on America. They don't like America. America has tried to move that nation into human rights, and they wouldn't move. And they're just a hard-nosed nation against America. And all the guy was doing was expressing his environment. And so you do that in life in a lot of ways. You do that because when the children, you that have families, comes home from school and they blurt something out that crosses every principle that you possibly ever grew up on, and you want to lunge back, you want to say things, you want to stop them from doing things or going places or hanging with certain people, instead of just holding up, wait a minute, think about what you're doing. You're only going to build a wall between you and your daughter, or you and your son, or whoever it might be, you and your wife when she comes home from work, or vice versa. And so, hit the pause button, deal with the twins. The twins are always there. Jesus even had to deal with it some. You know, at one point he told them, said, "Go tell an old fox that I said this and this," and it was Herod, King Herod, the king, and he called him an old fox. I'm sure Jesus didn't feel good about that. Later, another time he went in and he made some braids and he whipped them out of the temple. I'm sure he didn't feel the greatest about that. He got tired of being around people and he went off into the mountain alone and stayed there a day. And the disciples even worried about where he went and what in the world happened to him, and they got themselves in trouble, and I'm sure Jesus didn't feel good about that. There's just times when that twin raises up, and you either deal with it by hitting the pause button and thinking yourself through it, or you deal with it and the problem you cause by jumping out there ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
But they're there all the time. Twins.
Edwin and Roman. Every time I pray to myself, talk to myself. Jesus has said, I and you and me. She is him. He is us. Jesus Christ's new name is Edwin and Roman. He is me and me is him. Everybody can say the same.
Yes. Yes. And that's a good way to put it. Praying. I think Bobby Beaver wrote something about prayer, and the way he put it was, I don't have to mediate anymore. I don't go into mediation and like pray for people and this and that and the other. And so somebody wrote back, somebody out there in the Third Testament, I can't even remember who it was, but they wrote back and said, now that's good for you, I guess, but for me, when I received my revelation, I became the mediator, and I pray for people, and I stand in their place, and this and this and this. And I thought, I seen where Bobby didn't write anything back, and I hit the pause button, and I thought for a minute. I said, you know what? I wrote back and I said, if that's the position you're in, brother, then that's what you need to do. You need to be praying and try to be a mediator and try to mediate for the people if that's the position you're in. But as for Bobby, what he's saying is he knows that just the desire in his heart and heal and help all of his loved ones around him, and he doesn't have to waste that energy on going into prayer. So didn't see anything back, and I thought, you know, that's the way we should understand ourselves. It's not that we don't feel for people. I feel for them so much that I believe my empathy and my love and my compassion will do something for them. It will help them through their situation. I don't have to go sweat it out in prayer anymore. My desire for them says, I declare things are going to be better for this person. And they become better.
Yeah. I'm a witness.
One of our biggest challenges is learning how to shape our energy, direct our energy as an individual into collective situations. Because as an individual, how you use your energy is different than how you would use it collectively. And it's, if you're not careful, the way you apply your individual energy, you'll try to apply it collectively. And when you do, there's where the contrast comes in. So learning how to take your individualism and then looking at the body, the collective, and saying, how do I connect myself to that without being a total contrast? How do I mix it to where I'm a little of them and they're a little of me, and now we've met in the middle and we can resolve things? Because if you can't do that, you're like oil and water. You'll never mix. Things have to be shaken up. Yeah. So for me, I've realized that taking my individuality, my energy, and then trying to shape it and connect with those in a collective form is one of my biggest challenges.
Yes.
It really is.
Yes. And that's the huge challenge that I'm looking at. The influences of a one world government. It is how to take the things that we have dealt with individually, going into micro, going on the inside, clearing up who God is, who Satan is, who the demons are, and resolving those things inside you and bringing your world to peace and understanding and a great atmosphere. How do I now take that and shift the power of that into a collective body and bring a collective body to that? Now, I'm doing some of that, and we're doing some of that by showing up here on Friday night and Sunday mornings, and by the way we deal with one another, by the things we write every day on Facebook, by the things we talk about and put out and see and then discuss. We are actually shaping the collective body. And then after we've done that with our individual, our family, our community, and we take it to the world, now it's a matter of collectively. Don Parnell can't do it by himself. Daniel can't, but collectively, a collective body of the earth, we can begin to shift the whole movement of the earth and shift entire nations, everything, by our desires and the things that we're seeking. And we see it happening all around us. I put this, in my opinion, humanity, I was writing Brother Mitta, we were talking back and forth, Mitta Edwardson. In my opinion, humanity will continue to advance itself through benevolence of leaders, governments, nations, and spirituality. And what we will see is the religions fade away into the setting of the sun. Christianity, Islam, Judaism are three of the biggest whoremongers and warmongers, and humanity will be more loving and caring as those things dissipate and the power of them go away, and it shifts. The shift of power started at Sunset Mountain, from sonship, the three sonships, to the all in all. Ever since the appearing, the move of the Spirit has been taking all governments towards the one world government, the unity of the earth in its oneness. So Sunset Mountain brought a shift from the church dispensation over into a path leading into love divine, leading into the all in all. And what we're watching now is Judaism, Jewish religion, Christianity, Islam. We're seeing all of these things. They're being suppressed. They're fading away. People are realizing that it's just nothing but a warmonger. It's a way to bring war on people. So we're watching it dissipate. We're watching it go away, and we're watching the world itself. You know, we may put terms on it. We call them atheists. We call them universalists. We call them all kinds of things. But it's the Spirit of Christ that is moving us away from that war and constant religion. And it's moving us into a shift of power that is away from sonship into the all in all. Sonship, Son of God, Son of Man, Son of David, is finished. It's done and it's over. And we're going to get into it a lot more on Sunday, but the Son, the atmosphere of sonship is now surrendering itself to the all in all. And we are the collective body of the earth now. We are the collective body of the Spirit. We are the earth, and it is ours, and the correct governments are going to be set into place.
I agree.
We are blending more and more into them and with them. We're seeing more and more comments by leaders, whoever that leader is. I said, I believe, and Brother Mitch and I were talking, and we said we believe that the advancement of humanity is going to be through benevolence of leaders and governments. It's going to be the declaration of Jesus. I declare unto you a new commandment, you love one another. It's going to be that love developing in every government, in every system, in every part of the country, pulling us together in every part of the world. So when you see, I was talking about one world government, and we were sitting here talking about it a little bit. When you see a movement in the world that moves us into a better position, there's not two spirits in the world. There's only one. Now, you think about this. Before the Civil Rights Movement, there was William Branham on the scene. He was the spiritual movement that was a tremendous, monumental movement out of church into love divine, into the Word made flesh, William Branham. And then there was the Pope, which was bringing the world to a one church government, calling all Protestants and everything into one church government. And then there was John Kennedy, which was the political leader of the world. And then there was Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King. And in a matter of one decade, every one of those major monumental leaders were gone.
Yep.
This one assassinated, this one in car wreck, this one died, this one killed, on and on and on. And they were gone. And right on the heels of it, they brought about a huge spiritual and one world governmental movement. And right on the heels of that came LBJ and the Civil Rights Movement. And the Civil Rights Movement started out in America. And everybody said, well, it was a great movement to make things better, more humanitarian in America. But it was more than America. It went all across the world. The Civil Rights Movement itself, if you go back and just read in history, even though the Democrats hated to do it, they've always hated doing anything that helped the blacks or the Hispanics or now they claim to be the savior of them, and I'll leave all that alone. But we come to a point to where the Civil Rights Movement comes up, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and he wouldn't have made any one of those moves he made had it not been for Martin Luther King, the civil rights leader, the black leader in America, who kept pushing and pushing and having presidential meetings with him and pushed him into this civil rights movement and made him do it. And then when that happened, look at it since that time, under the name of humanitarian and civil rights, it has just about wiped out every dictatorship across the face of the earth. It brought on great men like Nelson Mandela, and you can just keep naming them, the men that raised up in great civil rights movements for all the nations across the world, African nations and everywhere else. It brought so many great things into view because it was a move, a great monumental move in the humanity and in the humanitarian government side. And it moved us forward, and it is still a big movement today. It is still doing things to make governments better. Right in the middle of the spiritual movement, all of that governmental movement was taking place. Now here we are again. And it's happening again. We're blending together and we're watching it. This is the surrendering of sonship now. Not a one man, not a king, not a movement like that. But it's a surrendering of sonship over to a collective body of the earth. Over to a collective body of believers, those that understand. And it's a movement. The body of the Lord is matured and ready to take on that change. It's ready to take on that business.
Right, I get it.
So we have what happens in the spiritual. Almost always, if you take a little time and just look, you're going to see where it made a great monumental change in the natural world governments. So we'll see some drastic changes coming up in this movement of the Spirit to a one world government. As we watch, things are still a little fuzzy. You kind of look around and thinking, how's this going to happen? In my mind, as to where the Spirit is moving us and the physical governments and the way things are going, I know where we have come to. I know where we have come to spiritually. a one spirit movement, no doubt about it. Understanding that, bringing all things into one. I know where we come to, and it's a great understanding to move past all of our battles, past all of our condemnations, past all of our illusions of sin and unworthiness and all these kinds of things, past all of our mediations. I need this between me and the Spirit, and we got past all of that. We got past all of our gods and all of our devils, and we got past all of that. And we move to one spirit, and it's me, and I need to deal with myself, and then I need to deal with how to resolve things in my community, in my loved ones around me, in my atmosphere, and everything else. And so we did that. The physical world is moving into the influences of the third coming now. We already did that. Spiritually, government understanding of the third coming. We did that. And now the world, the physical world, is making its moves into the third coming. And it's doing it rapidly. And I see three influences after the needed changes have happened. All these great changes, spiritually speaking. And now there's three. This is the first time, I think we'll all agree, this is the first time that the world has ever come completely together in all governments in unison since the Roman Empire.
Pretty much.
The Roman Empire had the world under a one government movement. It was loose. It was all those things because they didn't have the technology and the militaries and those kind of things that we have today. But the world has never been in unison ever again until now that it was underneath that Roman Empire. So, when we look at that and get an understanding of it, that was a symbol of something that was going to move later on.
It couldn't come into its fullness then, it wasn't ready, but the seed had to be planted so that later
That's
on,
right.
when the situation came about, then it could come to fruition.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's happening.
It's happening all around us now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say these things. I'm putting them out there according to my understanding. If you don't like it, that's up to you. If you don't want to believe it, that's up to you. I'm not forcing anything on anybody. But based on my understanding of the Third Testament, the rapid revelation that's taking place now in the politics and in the religious worlds, I said I see three influences. I believe this is what's happening. I see Rome. Let's think about Rome. Think about all that you've ever been taught about Rome. Antichrist, whoremongers, slaughterers, the great whore of Revelation 17. All those things that you think about Rome. That's what she was in those dispensations. We're past all those dispensations. I see Rome sitting here as a person who has seen many, many, many things come to pass that I have looked at. I see Rome, which is prepared with the large majority of gold. That's what happened over the last two dispensations, back in the Roman Empire, coming through the church ages, and up to even 1963, somewhere around there. William Branham woke up in the middle of the night. The next day, a train woke him up over on the other side of the Ohio River, and he went to Brother Woods next door and said, "Brother Woods, did you hear that train going through last night?" He said it was carrying all the gold from Fort Knox to Rome. And he said, Rome, gold is piling into Rome. Well, I believe that. I see Rome, which is prepared with the large majority of gold, while the nation of Italy, those that have the power around Rome, is toppling structurally. COVID-19, the governments, everything about them is just toppling structurally. Rome will financially become the great financial institution backing the currency of the world. You know how weak the federal currency is right now. It is weak as weak can be. And I see Rome coming in and backing that currency and becoming a financier or a financial stronghold for the world, not just for a nation, for the world, a financial stronghold. An institution backing the currency. So as Italy falls, Rome changes their garments. She did it before. Go read your church age book. William Branham said Rome was not always in Rome. It was in Pergamus. And they came in and burned Pergamus, and Rome changed their garments, moved into Rome, and the same system was reset up, and it became the Rome and the church. Whereas before it was Rome and all their gods and things. So they've changed their garment before. They're going to do it again. I see Rome, and I see them changing their garments and becomes the financial institution of the world, backing all of these different paper currencies. No longer Antichrist. This will be a great influence. Get all that Antichrist about Rome out of your mind. That's over. That's finished. Prophet burned that city. He exposed it for what it was, and he burned it, and he brought it to the ground. Nobody is worried at all in the world about Rome being an Antichrist. It has been exposed, it's over, and it's done. No longer Antichrist. This will be a great influence and a stability for the third coming world. We're in the third coming. It's a huge shift from our old judgment and condemnation messages about Rome and the churches and everything else. You're going to see the churches change their garment. They're going to have to or be done. So we're watching all of this take place all around us. Rome was the first influence that the Spirit began to deal with me and begin to show me that Rome is not going away. Rome is changing. They're moving into a new world. They're moving into a third coming world. They're moving into, they've left, they were in the first coming, they were in the second coming, and they're going to be in the third coming. But they're going to be of a different influence. They're not going to be trying to slaughter the world. They're going to be trying to financially help the world. That's where she's at, and that's why all the gold and all the preparation was happening, because the Spirit is using one world government movement to move everything to one world government, and it was its purpose of stockpiling all that into Rome was so this could happen.
Exactly.
And COVID-19 is toppling so many nations, so many businesses, so many governments. Everything else is falling apart, and it's bringing in a whole new system. You might not see it today. You might not see it tomorrow night, but you're going to see it. The Roman financial institutions and the USA will give a stable system for anything that would try to go rogue. In other words, if anything tries to go outside the financial systems and outside the influence of the United States, capitalism, and all of these things that we stand for, the humanitarianism, it's going to have trouble. It's going to have trouble doing that. I see the USA as the second influence. As the economic structure. I know what you've been taught about the USA. All of you are sitting out there saying, but it's supposed to be bombed. It's supposed to be nuked. It's supposed to be burned. It's supposed to be ashes all across America. And it happened. Words out of a prophet's mouth, judgment out of a prophet's mouth, fiery judgment, that is the judgment of the Lord. And it happened, and America has gone through a terrible time under that judgment scene, but it is over now. And I see the USA as an economic structure and military structure that will influence the world systems and bring them to a concept of a mix. Capitalism, laced with socialism, communism, imperialism, but remaining a strong influence in a republic and in a democracy, spreading across the world, because in that holds the humanitarian side of the governments. I see it happening. This will bring a more caring and loving and economically stable world, prompting a one world government. Rome and the United States pairing together, tied up together. You know when the prophet said they did it. When John Kennedy was in there as president, he said, there's Ahab, there's Jezebel, and the USA. He said they've paired up, they've become one. Well, here we are today, and that oneness is moving over into the third coming, and it's a whole different scene than what was in the second coming. And it's a whole different purpose than what was in the second coming. But it's happening in the third coming. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
I see Israel as the third influence, under the wing of Rome and the USA. If you've read the book of Daniel, you know that Daniel prophesies of a fierce little horn that would move in between the two great seas, and he would take power, and that horn, you know, horns on an animal, USA and Rome. And they would move in between the two great seas, right? The two great seas of Daniel was the Mediterranean Sea and the Dead Sea. And right smack in the middle of those two seas, just look on your map, is Jerusalem. So there'll be a power, a dual influence power, United States and Rome, that will move into and take control of Jerusalem and Israel. And when they take control, Israel will be the third influence under the wing of Rome and the USA. The little horn in Daniel, USA, will move between the two great seas, Mediterranean and Dead Sea, set themselves up for a vast influence across the world. Daniel prophesied this. Jerusalem sits directly between the two great seas, and the little horn is a strong influencer that takes over most of everything. As it moves in, it makes Jerusalem a what? International city. Already moved our embassy there. Israel's embassy is there. Rome's embassy is there. And at some point, to satisfy the Arab world, they'll say, okay, Jerusalem is not a part of Israel, but Jerusalem is not a part of you either. Jerusalem is an international city. And the little horn will move itself right in there. And those three governments of United States, Rome, and Israel will sit in that seat. And they would take over most everything. Jerusalem will become an international city and the symbolic capital of the world. So we see this movement. It's going on in how has this taken place in the spiritual government? How have we seen the Israel movement, the U.S. movement, and the Rome movement? How has that taken place in the third coming, spiritually speaking? Take a look all around you at what has happened. How that we had taken these great influences in the second coming, God and the devil and the Holy Spirit and the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, just threes all over the place, and we pulled them all in to the new city, Jerusalem, the old city there, and the one world government moving into Jerusalem. And we have a city, the New Jerusalem, and we've pulled all of these governments that we had outside of us. We've now pulled them into us and made them one inside us. And the world is going to do the same thing on the outside. And that's what it's moving for right now. We're watching it happen. The name may change. And might not even be Israel. Palestine. That would make the Arabs happy. Call it Palestine. Make Jerusalem an international city so Arabs and Israel don't have their influence over it, so to speak. Nobody's running it. And everybody's satisfied. And we have one great state called Palestine. And we have the governments of Palestine, different ones sitting on the Knesset and doing whatever. And the world becomes a better, softer, nicer, more caring, more lovable, with benevolent leaders in it, taking us further and further into the one world government. is happening. The U.S. has weakened a lot of corrupt organizations. It has weakened them to where they're just about ready to fall. Organizations like the European Union, NAFTA, WHO, World Health Organization, CDC, the United Nations. It's taken all these great organizations who were trying their best to suck America dry and deceive the whole world, and they have pretty well toppled them and made them weak and almost nothing. The WHO back in Bill Gates was trying to bring on this vaccine that's going to kill probably 20% of the population and everything else, and Rome and the United States and Israel are fighting it. They are the influence that is coming so hard against all these things that's going on. That's why I see those three raising up. They've had a terrible time. Israel paid for 2,000 years. They paid for what they did to Jesus, going throughout the nations, being slaughtered and killed in every way, all the way up through World War I, World War II, and finally made it back to Israel again. And the United States paid for the things that they did, and Rome has paid for the things that they did. And now that judgment and that coming is over, and we are in a whole new coming. So I see the USA militarily, economically, humanitarian, the greatest influence on the world. I see Rome reshapes and regarments herself to be the financial system of the world with the gold backing currency again. And I see Israel, the center point of the Middle East, with the international city Jerusalem being operated by USA, Rome, and Israel. Israel may have a name change to Palestine or whatever to bring stability and satisfaction into the Arab world. Same thing we did with one spirit government is going on right now before our very eyes. And we're watching a one world government move to these things.
Yep, I see that.
Is there...
Keep going, I'm learning. I'm just absorbing, I'm learning.
I mean, just look at the leaders and what he's saying. Just when you get the chance, go on the internet, study the new pope, study who's running Israel, study who's running the USA. Trump. He's not a politician. He's a businessman, and he cares about people. Take a look at it. It can't be the norm. It has to be an exception. It has to be someone who's completely out of the normal channels of the way these entities have run for years and years and years. And right now, that's happening in all three of these areas. Who it's being run by is not the traditional person. It's somebody completely different, ushering in new changes. All you have to do, if you're curious about this, is study the three leaders of this, and you'll get a better insight to what he's saying.
Look at the shift in the spiritual powers. I'm not claiming myself to be anything. I'm looking at it, just looking back across Benjamin Netanyahu. He came into the Knesset and began to come into power September the 27th, 1967. The very day I preached my first message, September 27, 1967, and the spiritual government made a great move as the natural one world government made a great move in Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu came through until he stepped out of office, showing the ending of the second coming. He stepped back into the office in 2002, showing the beginning of the third coming, the things that was going on around him, the same exact way that I did. I left the church ages, came into the Third Testament, stepped out and stepped into the third coming and got an understanding. He and I's lives have paralleled almost perfectly all the way down through time from 1967 until now. And I'm looking at me as an instrument or a representative of a spiritual move in the spiritual government. And I'm looking at Netanyahu and now, and I'm looking at Rome and this Pope that they've got going to do away with celibacy. He's doing away with heaven and hell. He's doing away with purgatory. He's doing away with so many things, and he's changing the very garments, and he's already offered help for many of the nations during the COVID time. He's doing so much to become a humanitarian and change the look of Rome, and there's going to come a backing out of Rome for the financial system.
Now, if you pay attention, the Pope has just declared, I think what needs to happen is everyone globally needs financial aid.
Yes.
Not certain countries, not certain, everyone equally needs financial aid. He's already stepping forward as a financial leader.
Yes.
Now, he's done that in the last week.
That's right. And what will happen is you won't see it naturally, so to speak. Like the Pope won't start giving out gold, but gold will become the backing financially, and because the gold is worth so much more, then the other nations that he is supporting will be able to print money like mad because they got the backing over here for that money. So they'll print more and more and more money and get it into your hands so that you can buy and sell and do the things that you need to do.
Yep.
And you won't see much of a change other than the money will be a little bit freer to come by.
That's it.
And it will be the financial situation happening of Rome backing all of these paper currencies. It's going to happen. It is. It's already
starting
happening.
to happen. Yep.
So we see this happening.
Question. And remember we had the prophecy, or we were believing that Russia would come into play somewhere in there, and with how they put that, the bear and eagle. Remember that whole?
Yeah.
How does that all tie in?
Okay. Russia is symbolic. If you take Russia and you take a good look at them, they are symbolic of the Third Testament. I'm not really wanting to say this.